Hello out there in YouTube land. My name is Timothy Connolly. Welcome to the Ringo Klecko Sports Report. Hello, Ringo Klecko.
Hello, Tim. It's Ringo Klecko. Really excited to be here, mate.
I know it's you. All right, let's go ahead and get started with our first big segment here in episode 2. We're going to talk about some NFL stuff. Earlier today, yardbarker.com posted a big report concerning the NFL coaches with the most wins. Going into the fact that the NFL has now been around for more than 100 years. Yes, that's true, more than 100 years. And that there's been a lot of head coaches who racked up a lot of wins through the game's history. Now, surprisingly, on this list, they're not giving you Vince Lombardi or John Madden or Bill Walsh. And, these are Hall of Fame coaches. Don't get me wrong, Ringo Klecko. I mean, I just want to be clear about that. But we're going to take a look at the number one guy, the top dog. Who holds the most wins in NFL history by a head coach? Well, the man's name is Don Shula, one of the greatest coaches of all time. He was the Baltimore Colts head coach in the 1960s, and of course, he had the Miami Dolphins from 1970 until 1995. Oh boy. Back-to-back Super Bowl wins for Don Shula in 72 and 73. And of course, who can forget the 1972 Dolphins? I mean, come on now, Ringo Klecko. We're talking about the only team to go undefeated in a season with the perfect 17-0 record. Now, Don Shula was 2-4 in Super Bowls. So he did get 2 rings there, but still, we're talking about the guy with the most wins ever. Ringo Klecko, what do you have to say about Don Shula?
Well, mate, from what you're saying, I can perfectly understand. The man started out as a big time loser, as you know. He lost Super Bowl III when he was a coach of the Baltimore Colts.
Hmm.
He's forever denigrated and looked upon with scorn for that horrible defeat suffered by the National Football League to the American Football League teams. That's kind of like January 1st, 1962. We went down to London to Decca Studios. Pete Best was in the band, and we failed the audition. John Lennon was singing "Money" like he was barking in the tube, and Paul McCartney was singing "Till There Was You." John quoted him saying he sang like a woman. So it's basically that was the Beatles' version of Don Shula's coaching performance in Super Bowl III. But then they got their act together, and they came back with Ringo, and all of a sudden they went on a string of hits. They were the biggest thing of all time. And like you said, Don Shula, number one coaching of games in the National Football League history. Yep, he lost Super Bowl VI to the Dallas Cowboys, 24-3. In that game, Bob Greasy suffered the biggest sack by yardage in the history of the league.
He did.
Embarrassment all around. Yep. He ran, but even a bigger sack than Neil O'Donnell's famous sack against Denver Week 1 for the Rich Kotite New York Jets in 1996. Bob Greasy, I think, had like a
And that's saying something.
58-yard sack. Yeah. And then of course he won the back-to-back that you talked about, and then he blew it with Dan Marino in the 80s.
Right. I'm just continuing to take a look at this list here on Yardbarker. It goes right on down. Let's have a look at the top 10. We just did Don Shula. At number 2, you have George Halas. Who can forget about that guy? First coach in NFL history to reach 300 wins. Coached the Chicago Bears for 40 years. Did you know the Bears have a little patch on their uniforms that says GSH? Those are the initials of George Halas, and they continue to honor that man on their jerseys today. Number 2, Bill Belichick, still coaching, thought to be the greatest coach in modern history. Um, some ups and downs with the Browns, but of course we all know about what he's doing with the Patriots. At number 4, we have Tom Landry clocking in with the Dallas Cowboys, followed by number 5, Andy Reid. At number 6, there's Curly Lambeau. That's right, founder of the Packers in 1919. And he was a player coach during the 1920s. Don't you miss the days of the player coach, Ringo Klecko?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I mean, if you can't play, then you really have no business being on stage.
Agreed. At number 7, as we continue on the list here, Paul Brown. Cleveland Browns. Well, hey, he established the Cleveland Browns and he only named the team after himself. That's nice. And number 8, Marty Schottenheimer. Good old Marty. At number 9, Chuck Noll, of course. And at number 10, Dan Reeves. And just a bonus for all of you out there, number 11 is Chuck Knox. So there's your top 11 most winningest NFL head coaches of all time. And well, that was cool. Nice article on Yardbarker. Check it out when you get a chance. Moving on, we've got some
I
MLB
just want to point
news.
out,
Oh, not
TC,
moving on. Ringo Klecko, go right
I
ahead.
mean, you mentioned Bill Belichick and
Oh, yes.
all of his wins with the Browns and with the Patriots. Of course, he's also the two-time head coach of the New York Football Jets with a record of 0-0-0. He's kind of like the Jimmy Nicol of Jets head coaches. He was the head coach of the Jets in 1997 for 6 days, and then in 2000 for 1 day. So he's kind of like Jimmy Nicol filling in when Ringo had the tonsillitis and he came down to Melbourne, Australia, and played in with the band.
Amazing. I did not know that about Belichick and the Jets. That's really something.
Yes,
And
he's only one of two Jets head coaches in history that do not have a losing record at 0-0-0.
amazing. Another phenomenal stat. I'm going to see if I can use that to settle a bet sometime. Now then, moving on to MLB news. Big news in the Major League Baseball League this week. We've got Marcus Stroman of the Chicago Cubs whooping it up and acting like a child with a celebration against the New York Mets the other night in the eighth inning. So much so that an anonymous Met came forward and criticized Stroman. And it looks like the wording was, and I quote, show some respect, be a professional. It isn't all about you, end quote. It was the New York Post that reported that, but here we've got, who is this? This looks like it is the Sporting News reporting this today. This is an article from just about 3 minutes ago, and it looks like the Cubs went on to win the game 4-2. But the big blemish and black spot on the Cubs is the lack of professionalism on the part of Marcus Stroman. And all I can ask here is, Ringo Klecko, what do you make of all this nonsense?
Everybody's got that different look. Everybody's got their different style. Everyone's got their way that they comport themselves as a professional show business figure. Not don't know about this Marcus Stroman person, but I do know that when Mr. Epstein first saw us down in the cabin in 1961, we were wearing our leather jackets, leather suits, cursing and eating chicken on stage, and basically hitting on the girls in the first 3 rows of the cabin during every show. And he said, "Look, if you want to get on TV and you want to go national and you want to make some money, you gotta." He didn't say it because he was a gentleman. He didn't speak in these type of harsh terms. We basically said, "Cut the crap, boys. You gotta stop eating and smoking on stage. You gotta gut in the suits and you gotta start saying please and thank you." And perhaps someone will talk to this Mr. Stroman about it, or perhaps there won't. Whatever. I think the bottom line is he selling the records? Is he number one on the charts? And as long as he is, he can do whatever he wants.
That's interesting. I don't know if having a talk with Stroman is going to solve anything. It did say here also in the article that Stroman, for his part, felt no need to apologize, and he already spent some time on Twitter defending his enthusiasm and going even so far as to retweet others who were offering their support to him. Hmm, interesting. One such supporter went on to tweet the following. A, it's a little ironic to talk about respect when you don't even put your own name to your criticisms about another player. And B, a guy being pumped up for shoving up his former team's arse is about as normal a behavior as it gets in pro sports. Let Stroh do his thing. Okay, well, so that's what's going on out there right now. This was retweeted by Stroman himself. So I think we already know how he feels about it. Having just a talk with the guy about it and reminded him that maybe it's time to stop eating chicken and smoking on stage and, be a little bit more please and thank you. I suppose it's worth a shot. Maybe they'll give it some thought. And why not? This is, after all, the Ringo Klecko Sports Report, and we're here to help these folks out there realize the error of their ways, and perhaps they can see a different pathway towards a nice Nice, peaceful solution, take the high road and all that. Well, we'll see how it all shakes out. Ringo Klecko, how do you really think this is going to shake out now? Come on, be honest.
Well, I don't really know anything about this Marcus Stroman person, but what I can say, as far as putting your name of attribution to making disparaging remarks or even critical remarks, I know when all this nonsense came out saying that I Feel Fine was basically a cheap ripoff of Bobby Parker's Watch Your Step. That if the person had been anonymous, then it wouldn't have gotten any traction. But it was a reporter in the London Times, and he was the one who said it. So the next time John saw me, punched his lights out.
That sums it up rather nicely, my friend. Hmm. And that does it for our Major League Baseball segment here on episode 2 of Ringo Klecko Sports Report. Moving right along, it's time for our listener mail segment. Yes, that's right. We keep getting letters rolling in via email. They get passed along to Ringo Klecko and myself by our trusty program director, Sonny Calzone. If you have letters and emails to send on in to us, please do. Just write to sonnycalzone@gmail.com. That's SonnyCalzone@gmail.com. That's right. And please put into the subject line Ringo Klecko Sports Report. And try to keep your letters or questions or comments somewhat sports related or entirely sports related. That is our preference here on this show. And all right, then, moving right along to letter number 1. Ringo Klecko, we've got 2 letters here. And the first one comes from Ray Romano of New York, New York. And Ray writes, why the hell did the Yankees trade Jay Buhner for Ken Phelps? Great question, Ray. We've been wondering about that for years. Ringo Klecko, do you know the answer to this question?
Well, what I do know is that when you do a cover version, the most important thing is to make it your own, whether it's Twist and Shout or Long Tall Sally, um, or even Maggie May. Every time that we did a cover, we did it. We put in harmonies. We where there were saxophones, we put guitars. We did everything to make it our own, so none of the other bands in Liverpool could do it quite the same way. So if this Mr. Romano is going to be going around doing cover versions of Mr. Seinfeld's show and his dialogue, then at least he can do is to do it in his own particular voice. But if he's not capable of doing that, if he's not either mad or a genius like John, well, then he really probably shouldn't do it.
Yeah, he probably shouldn't, but he went ahead and he did it anyway. So now we've got to deal with this question that really does need an answer because it is one of those burning,
Well,
burning questions.
if I remember that episode that Ray Romano wasn't in on Seinfeld, I think Mr. Steinbrenner's explanation is that his baseball people told him that Ken Phelps was a good prospect.
Well, that was the explanation, and I know that's what the boss said, but come on, Ringo Klecko, why did it really happen?
Well, I think I'd have to say that it was right about the time that the movie Caveman came out, starring Ringo Starr, Barbara Bach, and John Matuzak, and it failed to win even an Oscar nomination the following year. So I think that that's why the trade happened between Jay Buhner and Ken Phelps.
Ah, if only it had gotten an Oscar nom.
And Jay
Well,
Buhner would still be a Yankee. Yeah, that's right.
so be it. And moving on to letter number 2, which came into us via email from Nancy Hell of Romulus, Michigan. Hi, Nancy. And Nancy writes, Shuttlecock. I don't have a question. Really, I just enjoy saying the word shuttlecock. I think most people do. Well, thank you, Nancy, for writing that in. It is a fun word. I enjoy saying it myself. In fact, I've just said it twice, reading your letter aloud, and now I'll say it thrice. Shuttlecock. Ringo Klecko, isn't that one hell of a word?
Shuttlecock is a great word, and I think that Nancy Hale, in addition to sending in her letters, she should be sending in some photos of herself, so you and I can do proper research on everything about her. If you got Shuttlecock on the mind, that tells you a lot about a person. I know that Shuttlecock was the name that Paul McCartney always used when he checked into hotels after Paul Ramon was stolen by the Ramones. He figured he had to come up with another name because he didn't think anyone would call their band the Shuttlecocks. This was before punk rock. So Shuttlecock has always been on the Smokers Corner down in Liverpool. We knew a thing or two about that, and that the thing about your Shuttlecock is you got to keep it clean and you got to keep it ready to go at all times because you never know.
You never knew, no. True words were never spoken, Ringo Klecko. Well, Nancy, there you have it. Thanks for writing in. Glad we could include you on the program here. Moving right along, well, it's time for some NBA news. What recently happened in the NBA that's big news? Well, Ringo Klecko, I'm going to tell you. LeBron James and the LA Lakers just got eliminated from the NBA playoffs. And of course, LeBron was asked if now it's time for him to hang it up. Well, what he did say at that little meeting after the game is, and I quote, I've got a lot to think about, to be honest. Just for me personally, going forward with the game of basketball, I've got a lot to think about it. This is according to the ringer.com. They just put up some possible scenarios here. They're speculating, of course, but there are four different possible scenarios here, Ringo Klecko, and I'm just going to roll them out. The first one is number one, LeBron is actually weighing retirement. Okay, he's 38 years old. He just completed his 20th season. You're talking about more than 65,000 minutes. He's already the NBA's leading scorer, and he just suffered foot injuries, limiting his play. Okay, so maybe he's thinking about actually shifting gears to focus on numerous other pursuits. Could be. Number two, LeBron might retire for 1 year. If you squint and you can kind of see it, LeBron announces his retirement and then he spends the entire 2023/24 season attending every USC home game, cheering courtside as his son Bronny suits up for the Trojans. LeBron appears on his TV show and makes courtside appearances at various Laker games. Behind closed doors, he gets as healthy as he can to return for the next season. Well, you know the rest. Okay, so number three, LeBron is publicly negotiating again. Okay, well, making it to the Western Conference Finals is a huge achievement for a rookie head coach. I get it. And a squad that was reshaped during the middle of the year. But for LeBron, it's, of course, it's just not enough. Um, LeBron said, I don't play for anything besides winning championships at this point of my career. That's exactly what he said. He also said, I don't get a kick out of making a conference finals appearance. I've done it a lot. It's not fun for me. Okay, interesting possibility there, I suppose. And finally, number four, LeBron demands a trade to the Golden State Warriors. That's right. How soon, Ringo Klecko, until Draymond Green begins recruiting LeBron to the Warriors? Did it happen as soon as LeBron stepped off the podium Monday night, just like the boys stepped off at the airport in New York when they first flew over from Britain? And will it even happen before the finals begin next Thursday? Nobody knows. So who knows what's going to happen now with LeBron? This will be very interesting to follow along with. It could very well be one of those four possibilities, but Ringo Klecko, what do you see in your crystal ball here for LeBron James?
Oh, I don't know anything about this LeBron James mate, but what I do know is you got to know when it's time to go, right? I mean, the Beatles, they did it all, they did it the best, and then they broke up.
They did.
So they went out on top. And if you want to become like an oldies act like the Rolling Stones, at some point you become a mere shadow of yourself, but you're still on stage singing Satisfaction when you're 42 or 142. And that's what Mr. LeBron James sounds like he's doing right now. He's Mick Jagger circa 2023, and he's not Mick Jagger at Altamont in the late 60s, having people stabbed to death by the Hell's Angel, looking good, singing great, and basically being the male version of the late Tina Turner. So I think what LeBron James has to make a decision now. Does he want to be like a Tom Brady and then be retired and a very young man now as a retired basketball player, or does he want to walk around the court like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar did till he was about 65 years old, looking very defendable and very much in the way?
Well, yes, he's certainly got some thinking to do. And, well, the good news for LeBron, anyway, is that he doesn't have to make a decision right away. He's got some time to think about what he wants to do and let him think about it. Again, 20 years in the league. Wow. Maybe it's time before the body just breaks down. I think we've already started to see some of the foot problems that he's been having, and maybe that's a telltale sign of some things to come. We shall see. Let's see what happens.
And
And
I would add parenthetically that all of the Beatles to a man could grow hair. So that's all I got to say about LeBron James.
okay, fair point. I don't think anyone's going to argue that. And rolling right along into our big NHL segment. Well, we have to talk about the series between the Dallas Stars and the Las Vegas Golden Knights. And Joe Pavelski just scored, of course, a game-winning overtime goal the other day, making it now a 3-2 series in favor of the Golden Knights. But the Stars, still facing elimination, have all the momentum that they need right now. They were down 3-0. With one more win, they tie it up. Who knows what's going to happen with the Dallas Stars and the Vegas Golden Knights, and if Joe Pavelski even has any more magic tricks in his little magic hat there. See what I did there? I almost made the mention of hat trick there. How clever of that. How clever of me, I should say that was, Ringo Klecko. But of course, now with regards to the Dallas Stars themselves, they should be aware, just like everyone else is, that any team that has ever had a 3-0 series lead in either a conference finals or semifinals in the NHL. Those teams have a combined 47-0. That's 47 wins, 0 losses record. And so the Vegas Golden Knights had that 3-0 lead. Will we see the 47-0 series record stretch out to be 48-0? I don't know. We shall see. Um, it's important to point out that in 2014, it was the San Jose Sharks who won the first 3 games against the LA Kings in the first round of that finals. And Joe Pavelski watched as the eventual Stanley Cup champions won 4 straight to take the series. Oh boy. Well, Joe doesn't want to see that happen again. So here we go now with Joe Pavelski. And Ringo Klecko, I gotta say, this is about as exciting as it can get for an NHL playoff game right now. What do you think?
Well, it's well known, mate, that the hardest game to win in a 7 game series, best of 7 game series, is the fourth game. And that's exactly what John was saying when he wrote, "Everybody's got something to hide except me and my monkey." You can't you can't walk away from victory. You've got to finish. You can't let the other team have any kind of opportunity to come back in the game, whether it's 47-0. In terms of how many times it's happened, that 48th time could be different. And when you have a Yoko walk in and actually sneak in, break into the recording of "Fool on the Hill" in 1967 and begin her insinuation into the life of John. Well, that was really the end of the Beatles. That was really the Beatles up 3-0 over any kind of outside of breaking up the band. But then she walked in, a fool on the hill, walking in with a Japanese television reporter under false pretenses, and that was basically Pavelski's overtime goal, changing the from a 3-0 lead to 3-1. And then, as we know, the rest was history. They moved in the bed into the studio for Yoko during the course of the White Album. That was 3-2, and then when they had the Let It Be Get Back sessions, well, that was 3-3. And then obviously by April 1970, the series was lost.
And what a story. And now here we've got game 5 of the Western Conference Finals coming up Saturday night, which is tomorrow night back in Las Vegas, where the Stars happen to drop the first 2 games of the series in overtime. Both of those overtime losses. Damn. Would you say that overtime losses in NHL playoffs games are like the equivalent to getting kicked in the teeth, Ringo Klecko?
Well, I wouldn't know anything about that. Ringo spent a whole bunch of years of growing up in hospitals, but that was from appendicitis and other types of ailments. He never got kicked in the teeth. I mean, he's not a very big man. He wasn't a big boy. He's only grew to be about 5'7", like Mr. Marcus Stroman. So people were more like kicking over his head rather than kicking him in the teeth. But yeah, when you give up an overtime goal, certainly there's been a quadruple overtime game this postseason in the NHL. That's got to be the biggest gut punch that you can imagine in that type of sport. But these hockey players from Canada, and the Beatles did play up in Canada a whole bunch of times. They're very resilient. They know how to put things out of their mind, come back, and next game, next shift, all that kind of stuff. It's kind of like when we finally when Penny Lane and Strawberry Fields Forever didn't make number one and broke our streak of 27 straight number one singles in England. That was basically the worst feeling in the world. But we came back strong, and we finished with a whole series of number one hits. And I will say, Mr. Pavelski, that does remind me. I've got to add, when Mr. Alan Williams drove us down in his van from Liverpool down to Hamburg in August of 1960, that would be John, Paul, George, Pete, Stu, and Alan Williams. There's also Mr. Pavelski, the waiter, who is going to serve as a translator down in Hamburg. And he's the person who took the famous picture of the Beatles standing in front of where it says, "Their name shall live forevermore." That was taken in Holland on the way to Hamburg, Germany on that first trip. So Pavelski is a name which cries across the decades. And probably when that photo was taken, it almost predicted the overtime goal that you're talking about, make it 3-1.
Interesting stuff, my friend. And what's your big prediction for this series? Will it be the Stars or will it be the Golden Knights that wins it?
No one ever comes back from being down 3-0, except those that did.
Well, that's a good answer. And on behalf of Ringo Klecko and myself, I would like to say thank you all for joining us here for episode 2 of the Ringo Klecko Sports Report. I hope you learned a lot. I know I did. I certainly learned a lot about Casey Stengel and about Mr. Pavelski. Not Joe Pavelski, but Mr. Pavelski, the waiter, who was the photographer, as it were. Thank you very much out there on YouTube. And before we go, Ringo Klecko, have you got any parting nuggets for the folks out there?
I want to thank all the viewers out there who've watched every episode of the Ringo Klecko Sports Report. Sometimes you get people that dial in for just an episode or two, or just for a segment or two, and we appreciate all our fans. But for the diehards who've been with us every single episode of the Ringo Klecko Sports Report, that's kind of like every fan who's bought all of our singles, starting from My Bonnie all the way to the end, Ballad of John and Yoko. We really do appreciate all of you. You know who you are. Take a bow in unison, like the Fab Four did at the direction of Mr. Epstein when we had to stop eating chicken and smoking on stage.
Well said, my friend. And yes, I thank all of you out there for listening and for watching, and we'll see you next time on the Ringo Klecko Sports Report. Signing off.